Hello, everybody.
Whoa.
Greeting.
It's good to see everybody again this week. Been an interesting week, but here we are. We're coming at you from an undisclosed location near the shores of Lake Erie. So, this week we're going to talk about Christmas to a little bit different take on what you normally get from us out of Christmas. So, just want to cover that. I know a lot of people have they struggle with this. You know, I know a lot of people in the church, especially, have negative connotations that can carry over into how they treat people that don't know any better. And remember, they don't know any better. So, so we're gonna cover that tonight. So, if you would, James, if you'd start us out.
Okay. This joke is a young lady came home from her date. She was really sad and downtrodden. She told her mother, and she said, "Anthony proposed to me an hour ago." Her mother said, "Then why are you so sad?" That's what the mom said. "Well, he told me he's an atheist, Mom. He doesn't believe in heaven, and he certainly doesn't believe in hell." Her mother replied, "Marry him anyway. Between the two of us, we'll show him how wrong he is."
At least with one of them, right?
They'll teach you about hell.
Yeah. Oh my.
This atheist starts complaining to the waiter. "Hey, what's this fly doing in my soup?" The waiter says he's praying. "Very funny," says the atheist. "I can't eat this. Take it back." The waiter said, "You see, the fly's prayers were answered already."
Oh my.
One more. This is an old one, but I want to throw it anyway. The atheist goes to court because he want to block all these Christian holidays. The judge asks him, "Well, why do you want to do that?" He says, "Well, we atheists have nothing. The judge, we have no days. It's not fair." The judge says, "Yes, you do." He says, "What? April 1st.
That's kind of funny. That's pretty good.
April Fool's Day. And I thought we might start with Psalms 14, which is applicable for April Fool's Day for atheists. Psalms 14:1 reads, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They, meaning the fools, are corrupt. They've been abominable. Have done abominable works. There's none that doeth good." And he goes on and say they don't want understanding. That's why they're atheists, to cover up their abominable works. And I was thinking, with the help of my number one advisor, that we don't want to do anything that appears to be supporting the anti-God, radical, evil, whatever you want to call it, earth worshippers. By the way, most of these anti-Christmas, anti-Christianity groups, they don't really mind the season of lights. Actually, that doesn't bother them. But what they hate is any mention of Jesus Christ's name, any Bible scenes like the manger, and they get really offensive to people during the Christmas season because they want to be in your face. And I don't think we should be seen as being like them or supporting them. Um, and we shouldn't be unkind or condescending to people who believe in Christmas.
No, no, and you know the people that do that, the atheists and all that, they're as ignorant as the ones that are celebrating Christmas. So they think they're being anti-Christian by doing that, even though, and in their minds they are, and in their hearts they are being anti-Christian by doing that.
You know, I used to get put out when somebody would say Merry Christmas to me, because it's not something I've ever done, and being raised the way I was. But you know, I thought about it. They're really trying to be kind, and so when I had a fella say it to me today, and I said, "Thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend. What else do you do?" He was really trying to be kind.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're not supposed to give you know, a sharp response or evil for good. You know, in their heart they're doing good. We're not supposed to return evil for that. That's not how we're supposed to represent.
There was a while in my late teens, I would respond with, they'd say Merry Christmas, and I'd say, and you have a happy Hanukkah. And then they put them on their heels, like, uh-oh, what'd I do? You know?
Yeah, early on in my life, I would, you know, somebody say Merry Christmas, and I'd be like, well, I don't do Christmas. And they'd be like, oh, you don't? I'm like, no. And you'd be in like a grocery store line or something, and you can't have a discussion about religion or anything else while standing in a grocery store line, because you got other people waiting for you to check out. So, you know, I realize that people say it just like when they say, you know, well, how are you doing? Most people don't really want to know how you're doing. It's just a greeting. And if you actually start to tell them how you're doing, they'll be like, why did I open my mouth?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like you, I realize that, you know, most time when people are saying Merry Christmas to you, they're just saying, you know, have a good day, or, you know, see you later, and it's just a greeting like that. And so, like you, David, I just kind of look at him and go, you know, well, thank you, because of the sentiment, and that's it. I take it for what it is. It's a good sentiment, and I appreciate when people are nice to me, even though I may not agree with the season that they're observing. Them saying it to me has no effect on me, other than that they're being nice, and that's how I try to take it.
They enjoy this season. It feels good to them. It's how they were raised, and they're trying to share that with you. It really is a kind thing, even though we know different. My son said he doesn't know how to answer people when they ask him if he's Christian, because he says, I am Christian, but I'm not Christian the way most Christians think Christian. It's confusing, you know. The answer is I am Christian, but now he told them he's like them in so many ways when we're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't think we have to be so afraid of, well, people will just assume that you're like everybody else. I don't think we don't need to fear that so much. God understands. He knows what we're doing and not doing. And one thing that's interesting, the Pew Research poll revealed that 81% of Americans believe in the virgin birth of Christ. And there was some social scientist on TV recently. He was shocked by that figure, because most prosperous Western countries that are nominally Christian, the percentage is much lower. Even if they're in a church, they don't really believe it, you know, because of evolution. They don't really believe it. America is more, even with our prosperity, we're still more Bible-oriented, at least to some extent, than most prosperous Western countries.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people who read their Bible, and they don't have the same understanding we do, but they do have a understanding. I had a fella a couple years ago walk in my place, and he looked like a gangbanger or something, big guy and rough looking. When he came in, I thought, boy, hope this guy's nice, you know. And as we talked, he started talking about the Bible, and we ended up talking for a half an hour or so, and not necessarily disagreeing. And he said he was an African-American guy. He said some very conservative, strong things about right and wrong and how he voted and politics, and was very open with me. I still see him probably, I don't talk to him much, but I see him going through my parking lot probably weekly. Very nice man.
You know, sometimes not wise to judge people by the cover. I know, and sometimes you can, but a lot of times you can't. I was thinking about that. 81% of Americans believe in a basic Bible statement. That's really a positive for America. I know right now there are a lot of negatives, but I think as you look at the world as a whole, America may still be the most Bible-oriented Western nation on the planet. It's possible, at least. And there are a lot of people who do take the Bible seriously that are still out there. And the only way we're ever going to reach them, at least on a one-to-one personal relationship, is if we don't appear to be against Christianity. Because I made that mistake. The moment you say humbug or something like that, wow, humbug, they think of Ebenezer Scrooge, and you're not a Christian. And we don't want to give that feeling to people.
Yeah. I have found in my life that the easiest thing to do is when somebody comes to me with something like that, especially if I know I'm in a situation where I can actually have a little bit of conversation, is I just simply tell them that I don't keep Christmas. And usually it becomes, well, why not? And usually I just answer with, well, it's a religious preference, and if they ask, well, why or how come, I'll say, well, because from my studies it comes from pagan origins and roots, and so I don't believe in that. And I don't ever, attack them or anything. I just answer their questions as they ask them. And my firm belief is that if you get aggressive or come across as attacking someone's beliefs, basically you're shutting a door and you will never ever be able to talk to them again because they feel like you just attack. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you leave that door open and they feel like they can come and they can go without being hindered, it opens lines of communication where you can actually have some pretty decent conversation, whether they agree with you or not. At least they ask what it is you believe, and you're allowed to tell them without any threats.
That's a great. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
A couple of things I've done is when I say I don't keep Christmas and they ask why, and I say, well, because the word Christian means to be like Christ, and I can't find evidence in the Bible that Christ did it. And because it doesn't look like he did that to me, I'm trying to be like he was, because I know for sure that he was resurrected and that he is in heaven. I don't know that anybody else is. I don't have proof of that. But I know for sure that he did certain things. So I try to do those things that I'm positive about that he did, and he didn't do Christmas. So to be like him, I try to do what he did. And I had a fellow the other day looked at me and he says, we got some things in our religion. He's a Southern Baptist. He says that we're different on. He says, but we're closer on more of it than you think. And I think in some ways there could be some truth to that than the way I was raised and where it came from and where we are today.
I think we have more in common with at least the Bible-believing Protestants than we realize. I mean, a lot of things we do agree, like the virgin birth of Mary and Christ in the manger. All those are in the Bible. They're real. And maybe it's an inside debate about the timing and a few other things, but we do have more in common. I like what you said, Kelly, about keeping communications open. Remind me, and that's very correct. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 9, because Paul, in his inimical way, said just what you said, Kelly. 1 Corinthians 9. I want to pick it up in verse 19 to get the whole scope of what he's saying. That though I be free from all men, meaning he's not working under somebody's thumb, yet I have myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. Notice, how does Paul persuade more people to the truth? Verse 20, 1 Corinthians 9:20. Unto the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might gain the Jews. Now, of course, for Paul, that was easy since he had grown up a Jew, but I think I know what he means. He finds points of agreement with other Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. To them that are without the law. Now, he's speaking of probably pagans who don't know the law or don't believe it, as without the law, being not without the law to God, but under the law of Christ. In other words, he's really not law-breaking, but he approaches the pagans from their perspective. He finds some common point of agreement as a touchstone link point. And it's like you were saying, Kelly, if we drive him away right away, you'll never persuade him of anything. To the weak I became as weak, that I might gain the weak. I made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. So Paul identified with weak people and others. By the way, anybody who says, I have never had a weakness in my life, he's worse off than he thinks he is. But Paul did just what you said, Kelly. He looked for points of agreement, and it says in Acts 17:6, Paul turned the world upside down. His impact on the whole Roman Empire, which was most of the world at that time, was obviously God backed him up with a great power. But the point is, he knew how to deal with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and don't forget. I mean, when Christ was talking to them in the temple about the signs of the end times, he says, it is Luke 21. He says, You'll be betrayed even by parents and brothers, relatives, friends, and he goes on to say, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake. So them same people will be, they're also going to be persecuted that keep Christmas right along with everyone else. So we just got to keep that in mind. And I think of that little girl that was in Columbine, I think it was, that said, do you believe in Jesus and that the murderer shot her and killed her? The fact that she kept Christmas, I don't think that's going to mean much.
No, that's a good point. I tell you what, we may be surprised at what God does and doesn't do. Not that it's up to Christ's judgment, but there are a lot of people who are faithful in what they know.
On the same subject, the church I grew up in, I was talking to one of the ministers one day, and I said it's my opinion that the day will come in God's kingdom, maybe in the first resurrection, we don't know, that some little lady who sang off tune, went to church on Sunday, had a big cross around her neck, babysat all the kids, read the stories in Sunday school, kept Christmas, ate foods we don't eat, but her heart was so good, she was there for the sickly, she was there when people passed, that God will look at her heart, because he never told her the Sabbath and the holy days and things, and she will get that same blessing that some of us get. And this minister said to me, I hope someday God calls you and converts you.
Well, I think we have to be careful, like you're saying, Dave, about being so exclusive. It's up to God to make the decisions, and so I'm not trying to change any doctrines. But I look at some of these issues as inside the ballpark Christian debates. We don't want to join with the Christian haters. Be on their side.
What it is growth. It's growth being a Christian, getting past the point where the meat that was sacrificed in the temple doesn't bother you anymore, when Christmas doesn't bother you anymore, and when you can represent Christ to the people in the outside world. It's growth. It's how you grow as a Christian, is to keep gaining understanding and getting more Christ-like. You don't act like I don't know, standoffish or stuck up or snooty because you know something they don't. Well, they can't know it, and you were given a gift. Don't take advantage of it.
Well said. Well said.
A thought occurred to me. Probably the worst Christmas part for us is when our boys were in elementary school, and we're in a fairly Christian town, although it's going down like many others, but still a fairly Christian town. So this place lit up. It used to light up a lot more than it does now, but it really lit up for Christmas and Christmas parties at school, and we were in a subconscious way. We were defensive about cheating our boys out of the fun of Christmas. And I imagine people feel that way. They just don't admit it to themselves. And I think we ought to talk a little bit about how to handle that. Because, like you were saying, Ken, now that our kids are bigger and we're older and more mature, Christmas is not a threat to us. We would care less. Maybe we don't send out Christmas cards with the boss and stuff, but they probably don't care anyway. But it's not much of a pressure on us. But what about people with parents with young kids?
Well, I know that.
It's rough. I have a friend of mine. He knows some of it. You know, he knows Christmas is pagan. He's in a Sunday keeping church, and he knows some stuff. It's like he's kind of getting there, but he can't get anyone else he knows, especially his family, to stop keeping Christmas. So he has a bit of a bitter attitude about it. But I said, look, you don't want to cause trouble. You don't want to lose your family over this. You know, you do what you want to do, but then don't make them feel guilty or bad or wrong about doing what they don't know any better to do. It's hard to give that up. It's hard to quit smoking. It's hard to quit drinking. It's hard to quit Christmas. It's kind of a similar road that you can't just tell people, we're going to cut this off cold turkey and that's the end of it. You've got to be understanding of what they're going to go through emotionally. They've been doing it for, who knows, 20, 30, 40 years, and then they're going to tell their children that you can't do it. And then there's grandparents, and it's a mess. So you got to be very understanding.
Got a friend of mine for 20-something years. He's been a buddy of mine, and I called him yesterday because I hadn't talked to him in a couple of weeks and just checking on him. His son's down visiting. His son's, I guess, around 30, who was one of my martial arts students a long time ago. And he says, hey, he starts laughing. He goes, Dave, listen to this. Nick started reading the Bible, just sitting and reading it. And he says he won't keep Christmas. And he came up with a bunch of other things where this kid, it's what we do, how we think. And he said he's visiting because he wants to see his mom, but he says he's not buying presents. He doesn't want any presents, and he says he's so angry when he looks at churches of the world. He says he looks at them like they're just terrible because they're not studying the Word. And he said that this kid's just reading the book on his own and just trying to figure it out and coming up with an awful lot of the stuff that we believe. And he seemed pretty happy about it.
Well, I hope he is, but I think in retrospect, at a subconscious level, my kids resented not being able to keep Christmas. Now, they wouldn't say that, but they did. One of my sons did a comic book. Was it Christmas at Ground Zero, and a comic drawing of Santa Claus that made him look horrible. But here's maybe you could try to do something for your kids like this. Of course, tell them the truth. Tell them we're going to have more fun at the Feast of Tabernacles than these kids have at Christmas with toys that they waste and throw away and all that. Commercials. They'll, as they grow up, they'll see the truth of that. And then maybe I'm just suggesting this. If somebody doesn't believe in it, I'm not sure I'm right. Tell your kids, look, why don't we shop, say, 2 or 3 days after Christmas for bargains, because that's the smart thing to do. That's when the bargains are there. Maybe you can get something really nice, whatever you can afford to spend, so that they get something, but they're just bargain hunting. You're not keeping Christmas, and let them know that at the feast they'll get some gifts, and they're going to get a lot more out of the feast than everybody gets out of Christmas.
We do that anyway we love the holidays because the day after is half off, man. The world can have your holiday. I want half off. That's what I want.
You see how cheap candy gets after Halloween?
Oh, 75%. 2-3 days later, man, you get them little peanut butter cups. You can get them for a couple of, $1 a bag, man.
Yeah, take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
I know also, Ken, would you like to explain how Christ is the God of the Old Testament? Most people don't know that.
Sure. Everybody knows. Most of us know that in the Book of John, in the first book of John, it opens up with explaining that Christ is the Word. He was the spokesman, and that he was with God, and he was God, and that everything that was created through him. Through him. So that goes back to the fact that he was the one who said, "Let there be light. Let's make man in our image." Um, all things in the Old Testament are in line with the wishes of Jesus Christ. So everything that you see in the Old Testament, they think is that mean God over there, actually was instituted by Christ.
If I can throw out a scripture,
Go ahead.
Colossians 1, verse 16. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him, for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn among the dead, which explains that nobody else went to heaven here, so that in everything he might have supremacy.
That's kind of the be-all, end-all of who Christ is and what he's here for.
By the way, would you all like to hear one of the old corny favorite jokes about atheists?
Sure.
Why not? We're not a protected group yet. Go ahead.
This atheist is running through the woods, and he's running through the woods. All of a sudden, he sees a bear, and the bear is closing ground on him fast. He realizes, as big as that lumbering bear is, he's outrunning me. What am I going to do? He runs a little further. The bear is closing ground close. He falls on his knees and he prays. He says, God, I didn't used to believe in you, but you got to help me. And suddenly everything froze, including the bear. And God said, well, you're now going to believe in me. He says, well, I just want to make one request of you, God. Just one request. Even though I haven't believed in you in the past. God says, okay, what is your one request? Could you take that growling, mean grizzly bear that's pursuing me, and could you turn him into a Christian? And at that moment, the bear's paw is getting ready to disembowel him. The claws are showing, and God freezes things again and says, your prayer has been answered. We go back to full speed. The bear pulls in his paw. He goes like this, and he says, Father, thank you for the food that I'm now about to intake of.
Oh.
I know it's old and it's corny, but I like it. Did you all have heard that joke before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Somebody was right and I was wrong. Which is not that unusual as these things go. One reason it's important to realize the God of the Old Testament, because if you go to Jeremiah 7:2-4, it says clearly there that a tree is decorated, and the pagans fear the tree because it's involved with their pagan gods, and they're very superstitious and fearful. Well, if we offend this god, we won't get any rain and we'll starve to death. If we offend that god, our enemies will conquer us. There are a lot of things of that nature. No, I meant to say Jeremiah 10. Did I say Jeremiah 7? I meant to say Jeremiah 10. That's when it mentions the tree. Jeremiah 10. Sorry about that. And it talks about the tree and how they nail it to a board, and people are superstitious. And then it says in Jeremiah 10:5. That's the verse I want to read. They're upright as the palm tree because they've been nailed, on a board. But speak not. They must needs be borne about because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they can do no evil, neither also is there in them to do good. And as I thought about that scripture, Jeremiah 10:5, I thought, have any of us ever let ourselves be intimidated by a Christmas tree? Like we fight with another relative. They want a Christmas tree in the house, and you think, oh no, I can have a Christmas tree in my house. You know, whatever. I was thinking, really, as God says, don't be afraid of it. It's meaningless.
Yeah, you give it power when you fear it.
Yeah, I've heard people in church make comments about this time of year and how horrible it is and how it drives them crazy and how they'll be so glad when it's over because it's so horrible. And they talk about the lights and how they're offended by the lights and the music that's playing in the stores and stuff. And truthfully, I've never looked at it that way. It's something that the world does, but I admit when I was younger, I knew all the Christmas carols, and so when I hear them now, they get in my head, and I will find myself humming along with them, and I've yet to see my head explode. So,
well, it's getting there.
But it's something that I don't partake in. I don't celebrate this season, but it doesn't bother me. I mean, it's I realize that people don't understand. I realize that God's not calling everyone. It's something that they do. I understand the meaning of it, but it doesn't intimidate me. It doesn't make me angry. I don't get sick feeling or goosebumps or anything because of now going shopping. Now that's a different story. That scares me because there's some crazy people out there, after that last item and things. So that's a different story. But as far as the lights and things, I mean, I'm driving down the highway. I see the lights. I thought, that's pretty. I like the purples and the greens and the reds. And but it doesn't mean anything to me other than it's just a pretty light. It's not something I'm going to put on my house, but I'm not going to go over and tear down the neighbors or tell them that they're going to another world or whatever because they have lights up on their house. That's their belief, and that's what they're doing. It has no effect on me.
Yeah, and I'm a little different. I'm a little different. I get a pit in my stomach. Christmas was always a time of abuse for me. And growing up, when the kids at school found out I didn't do Christmas, I took from the teachers as well, a lot of abuse. So inside of me, there's a little bit of, it's those people. And I don't know the Christmas songs. I never sang them. I never drew the Christmas color them in things that they did at school. A couple of years ago, I was going to go visit my dad Christmas time. And I told my buddy, I said, yeah, we have a list that we go down to get all of our stuff so we don't forget a razor or we don't forget shampoo or whatever. And he goes, are you checking it twice? And I go, well, my wife really does it. And he goes, but are you checking it twice? And I said, well, I guess she might. And then he realized I had no clue what he was talking about. And he thought it was pretty funny.
People realize that about me all the time.
Not just Christmas, huh?
I mean, I can understand, where you're coming from, David. I can see where, if you were put through that kind of thing, how it would be something more of a dread than someone like me who, grew up earlier in my life and celebrated it. And, I have some fond memories of it. So I can see the difference there. But again, I think it's something that, you can let things control you or overcome you, or you can take control. And even though you feel that way, I mean, I think that it doesn't preoccupy your mind constantly about how horrible everything is, and that you walk into a store, you hear it, you want to go rip the sound system out of the store. You probably don't really pay much attention to the songs and things.
Sometimes I hear them, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of me. It's no different than any other day when I go in, other than because I did grow up with them and I remember them. They do get in my head sometimes, and I will start humming one. My wife gets mad at me because it'll get in her head. But it's not something that I sit around, pondering and oh my, I've hummed Jingle Bells. My life's over now. It just doesn't. I don't see it that way.
We're kind of on the outside or looking in from a distance, in my opinion. Just kind of watch it, here it comes, there it goes. Try to stay out of its way, don't get involved. That's how I view it. I'm not in, and then I'll be glad when the traffic gets back to normal. That's my big complaint. It's just the traffic is pretty bad. But other than that, I just kind of watch it come and go, and I try to not
Well, let me throw this idea out there too. How would you feel if, while you were at the feast, you had people walking up to you telling you how horrible it was that you were keeping that it was pagan, that it was against God? You would look at them like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Go do your own thing. Leave me alone.
Exactly.
And we wouldn't like it. And so, one thing I've learned is if you're going to talk to somebody about Christmas, you don't do it during Christmas. Do it during the 4th of July picnic or something.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That's a good point. And about the music, I hate to disappoint you all, but some of that music is good. Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, and some other groups. I heard my uncle in the Baptist church once do Silent Night. And it was a great setting. I don't know the details. That song, by the way, I think GTA also said it. If we were to do that in the fall when Christ was born, that is a gorgeous song. And don't you realize Nat King Cole and Bing Crosby got great voices? Mm-hmm. I mean, you hear that song, and I remember hearing it, many, many, many years ago. I'm older than I look. And it does grab you, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does.
Let me tell you a sad Christmas story. Well, it's not all that sad, but for a number of years in my life, because of problems my parents were having, I won't go into details, I would get things for Christmas like T-shirts and socks. And the kid across the street is piling up the toys and a whole bunch of other people all around me. Can you imagine how I felt? So I'm saying that to say, giving up Christmas was easy for me.
You weren't too fond of it anyway.
I wasn't too happy with it anyway. You're selfishness, but hey, that's what we are. We're selfish.
Long before I was even in the church, I didn't like Christmas, and in fact, my employees didn't. They knew I didn't like it. They called me the Grinch. So one year they bought me Grinch socks. Believe it or not. That's how much they knew I didn't like Christmas. And but I just don't. I never had a big affection for it.
I asked my wife about giving up Christmas because she grew up in a very Italian family, and it was a big time for the family to get together and have meals and that kind of thing. And the first couple of years we were married, she just straight up lied to me and said it didn't mean anything to her. And years later, she came back and she said the first couple of years it was tough because she loved her family so much. She didn't associate necessarily with anything religious. It was being with family. And so when you do tell people how evil it is, sometimes you're getting them on a more personal level than what you might think.
By the way, I don't think God is as petty as people think he is. Remember when the Pharisees made such a fuss about certain things like ritual hand washing and their Sabbath rules? Christ was a lot more flexible. I don't think it would be wrong for somebody to go to a Christmas dinner with their relatives. In some appropriate way and time, they might tell them, look, hey, I'm not really into Christmas, but I'm into you all. And I just want to be here to fellowship with you all. Just kind of be laid back. And I don't think God is as picky as we think he is. Like if you were in India, where they have they worship those, is it Vishta statue, the elephant, and some of those other things. And you were just over there visiting and getting to know the people, you probably, I'm not saying that Christmas is as pagan as Vishnu, but I'm making a generality here. You wouldn't feel any unction about avoiding them because of things they were doing that you didn't agree with. If you wanted to be with them, that is.
Well, I actually told my wife to go over for the meal because it was her family. I may not have remembered that it was Christmas. I think I did know, but I'm not sure. But I said, that's your family. Go over and see your family. They didn't invite me anyway, so.
Do you blame them?
You're the one they blame for all this, right?
Exactly.
I know the feeling, yes. Some of my wife's relatives, I think they're suspicious of me. My fault. I was looking at Luke 1:5, And I will just read it and just explain it for those who are interested. This is what I call inside the ballpark, deep Christian knowledge that most Christians don't have. But if you're interested in when Christ was born, I'll read it. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abiah, and his wife was a daughter of Aaron. Her name was Elizabeth. Then they go on to talk about basically how he wanted to see the Messiah before he died. It's an interesting story. And by the way, David had set up courses like 2 weeks or less for these priests to take over much of the activities, and they rotated it so it wouldn't be so hard on just one family. So we know when this priest rotation was. It was around early mid-June, like June 13th or something, and they know that historically. Well, then he went on and had a baby, because what the angel said, and the baby was John the Baptist, who's 6 months older than Christ. So John the Baptist, you put 9 months on after that point, would have been born roughly during the spring holy days, and you add 6 months and put Christ being born during the fall festival. And we've always felt the fall festivals are the real birthday of Christ, which is a holy day, one we should celebrate. It's about the trumpets, the second coming of Christ, and the world being at one with Christ's atonement, and the wonderful millennium rest, Feast of Tabernacles. And I believe we can get more out of those spiritually and maybe even physically, if we help our kids and ourselves, than people get out of Christmas.
Well, if you take, we all know when Christ died, and he died at 33 and a half. So if you take 6 months back, or I got myself lost. 33 and a half, he died at Passover time. There's no way he was born December. He had to have been born and in the fall holidays, because he went down. If you go back 6 months from trumpets, that puts you back to Passover.
Yeah, like if the Passover was sometime in March, 1st of April, you go back 6 months, it'll put you in the fall. That's like you said, in the fall. By the way, you can look that thing about the courses of the priest and when Christ was born. It's on the internet. I mean, I had notes from Big Sandy about it, but it's on the internet. You can look it up on the internet, and they'll give you all the little gruesome details that I may have left out. It's a long discussion, but it's all there. And it wasn't even that hard to find. One thing I thought was interesting, I explained to one of my relatives, it was a polite discussion, no big deal, nobody angering me, that I wasn't keeping Christmas, and it came from the timing of it came from the Roman Empire Saturnalia. That particular relative, I convinced her it was true. But what do you think her response was?
That's not why I do it.
Exactly.
I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not why they're doing it because everybody else does. They don't care. I think we have to realize that it's not, to many people, they're doing it because it's the thing to do. Even if you told them the truth, it wouldn't make as much difference as we think it would.
I mean, if God's not calling them, they're not going to be able to see it anyway.
No, absolutely not. And it's not their fault necessarily that they're not being called. It's something we don't know why. We don't know why we were called.
Right.
We don't know why they're not called. So that's his. That's completely and totally up to him what he wants to do.
But I don't think it's wrong if you get on a good relationship with someone that's willing to talk to you about stuff. You can tell them about say try the Feast of Tabernacles instead of Christmas, and see if it isn't spiritually and even physically much better for you. They probably will say, like this particular relative says, I don't care.
Right. And it's our job to answer questions. It's our job to live in such a way that we get people to question why we're doing things the way we're doing them, and that we're consistent, and that we're understanding and loving and patient with them, and that we represent as best we can what Christ wants us to portray to the world. That's our job. It's not our
So-
job to accuse them, to complain about them, to, tell them that they're doing everything wrong and belittle them, because they're not going to listen.
There's a local church who, a gunsmith that I deal with, his wife is part of the ladies' ministry or whatever, has asked me to come over and do a Bible study and explain to them why we believe what we do, because it's so foreign to them and they're very curious. And
You going to do that?
I will do that. I will do that. If God's working there at all, who knows?
We'd really like to hear how it goes.
Yeah, but he hasn't. I haven't seen him in a while. But next time he comes in, I'll ask him about it, because I will do that. And who knows? Somebody may be convinced.
Very possible.
That's very true. I meant to. Why don't we discuss the very timely topic that we want to cover for next week, which is oil prices and Bible prophecy. Because I think we might be surprised. This may have a greater effect on shaking up the world, maybe, than we think.
Well, not just the prices, but the whole mess going on in the Middle East because of that, and how it's going to push Russia in this direction and Europe in this direction, and there's a lot in play there. So yeah, it could really affect things. And actually, yeah, we could discuss. That would be great.
Yeah, oil prices and prophecy. And even if we don't know the answer, it'll get us to watch the future more carefully. Because a lot of people probably think, "Oh, oil prices are down. Isn't that wonderful? It'll last forever." One, it will not last forever. I guarantee you that. But two, it may have more meaning than just, "Hey, I can fill up on $30."
Yes.
Do you ever think the day would come you'd be happy that you could fill up on $30?
Yeah, really.
That is amazing, isn't it?
What's the prices down in Florida, Dave?
236 today.
236 today.
236. How about you, James?
It's $2.28 in town, but there are stations in this state. I've seen $1 and $2 and a penny about 80 miles north of me.
Yeah. How about you, Kelly?
Around about 236, 240.
We're seeing them as low as 197, 198.
What?
I'm going to drive up there to fill up.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I never thought I'd.
You must be working on that new math. That what's that?
Common Core
math. That's the Common Core math. The answer is yellow.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. We can. There's a lot we'll be able to put into that, because there's a lot to play in that whole scenario, and there is quite a bit of information out there we can use to discern what could be in relation to Bible prophecy, how it could speed things up dramatically by having the oil be as fluctuating and as volatile as it is right now. So that sounds good. So is that it? Are we have we covered everything you'd like to cover? All right, sounds good. All right, well, thank you for listening, everyone. We really appreciate it, or watching. Join us again next week. And, by the way, we're over 6,000 views. We want to thank all of our loyal watchers that do that. So we're well over 6,000 and still growing. And, again, thank you all. Have a great Sabbath, and always seek the kingdom first, everyone. Good night.
Thank you,
Good
Ken.
night.